Have you ever felt like living in the absurd?
Hmm? I have all the time.
So, why don't we deal with the absurd today
And?
and find some laughter and unease blurred together?
Wow, sounds exciting.
Okay, let's meet in Eugene Ionesco's world, where rhinoceroses taking over a city and control until.
The last man standing emerges?
Welcome to LitChat. Today, we will discuss Eugene Ionesco's rhinoceros. But let me first ask you a few more questions.
Okay,
Have you ever felt like you are the only sane one left?
absolutely.
In a world gone completely bonkers?
All the time.
That is the feeling that Ionesco captures perfectly in Rhinoceros.
It's like it drops us right into this funhouse mirror version of reality
Yes,
where logic takes a holiday and rhinoceroses roam the streets
hilarious and unsettling.
all at the same time.
And that's really the essence of the theater of the absurd.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. The theater of the absurd. And what exactly makes rhinoceros fit into that category?
You can think of it as a reaction to the well made plays of the time.
Okay.
It's like Ionesco took all the rules of storytelling and just tossed them out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a clear plot and neatly resolved conflicts, you get these unconventional narratives, interesting, almost dreamlike, where language breaks down.
And characters grapple with the meaninglessness of existence.
They do.
So it's not just about rhinoceroses then.
No, there is this deeper philosophical layer at play. Ionesco was heavily influenced by existentialist thinkers, particularly Albert Camus and his concept of the absurd.
I know that. Camus argued that human beings are constantly searching for meaning and order.
Yeah, in a universe that inherently lacks both.
And Rhinoceros, with its nonsensical dialogue and bizarre situations, really represents that struggle perfectly.
Quite.
It's like the play is saying, hey, look around. Isn't it all just a bit ridiculous?
What it makes me think about?
What?
It makes me think about those moments when you are caught in a conversation that just goes in circles
Right, where words seem to lose their meaning.
and we're just left wondering what's the point of it all?
What's the point of it all?
What's the point of it all?
Haha, that's exactly the kind of feeling that Ionesco evokes.
He uses these seemingly silly situations to point out the absurdity
That's often hiding beneath the
of
surface.
our everyday lives.
Okay, and it's through this absurdity that he forces us to confront some pretty uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
And speaking of uncomfortable truths, Rhinoceros wasn't written in a vacuum.
Wasn't it, right?
There is a pretty heavy historical backdrop to consider here.
Oh, then it's impossible to talk about rhinoceros without understanding the historical context.
Right.
Imagine Europe in the mid 20th century,
Hmm.
the scars of World War II.
Right. Still fresh.
Yeah, the rise of fascism and totalitarian regimes, right? A terrifying reality.
Yeah.
This was Ionesco's world, and it seeped into every line of the play.
So he was writing from a place of personal experience.
Very much so.
Okay.
Ionesco was a Romanian French playwright with Jewish
Oh,
heritage,
yeah.
and he personally witnessed the rise of the Iron Guard in Romania, a fascist and anti Semitic movement.
Yes.
Imagine seeing your own friends and neighbors swayed by this dangerous ideology.
Yes. Embracing hatred and violence.
That experience shaped his entire worldview and fueled his critique of conformity.
And mob mentality.
It's chilling to think about the personal stakes he had in this play.
And it's so true. And it's more than just historical context.
How so?
It's woven into the fabric of the play itself. Remember that quote?
Which one?
In fact, I think that a man must either be unhappy or stupid.
Yeah,
That gives you a glimpse into his mindset
right. He saw firsthand how easily people could be manipulated
and how quickly reason could be abandoned.
in favor of blind obedience.
So, who was this guy who dared to hold up such a fearless mirror to society?
You know, Eugene Ionesco was a major figure in the French avant garde theatre scene.
Right.
Born in 1909, he bounced between Romania and France, and he actually began his literary career as a poet.
Wow.
Later, he became involved with a group called the Collège de Pataphysique.
Pataphysics?
Yes,
Okay, now you have to explain that one.
all right. Pataphysic is basically the science of imaginary solutions. It is a way of looking at the world that embraces paradox
Okay.
and absurdity, which perfectly aligns with the themes of Rhinoceros.
And it goes to show that Ionesco wasn't just playing with words on stage, right? He was engaging in a much deeper intellectual exploration of the nature of reality itself.
He was a bit of a rebel in both his personal life and his artistic choices,
Very much so. His plays were all about breaking rules.
challenging conventions and poking fun at the establishment,
Yes, he wasn't afraid to delve into uncomfortable topics.
like suffering and meaninglessness.
Right.
And he often portrayed his characters as robotic or manipulated, highlighting the dehumanizing aspects of modern society.
Okay. So, what is the story behind Rhinoceros?
Imagine a small, ordinary French town.
All right.
People are going about their day having coffee.
Arguing about mundane things.
Right, and suddenly out of nowhere, a rhinoceros appears.
Okay.
Not at the zoo, mind you, but charging right through the town square.
A rhinoceros.
And it's not just one rhinoceros. Oh man, more and more people begin transforming, shedding their human forms, and embracing this new, powerful rhinoceros identity.
So, at first it's just one, and then it's more and more.
And then more and more.
Okay. This is why it is hilarious and unsettling.
A complete chaos.
Everyone running around and these massive rhinoceroses stomping through the streets.
It sounds like something out of a fever dream.
That's exactly right. That's exactly the kind of disorienting atmosphere that Ionesco creates.
Right, he wants you to question everything, to feel like you're on a shaky ground, much like the characters themselves.
And there is a deeper meaning behind these transformations.
Like a metaphor?
Yes,
A commentary on the human tendency towards conformity?
those rhinoceroses, they represent the blind acceptance of ideology.
The loss of individual thought,
Right.
the dangers of mob mentality.
And remember, Ionesco is writing in a time when these dangers were all too real. It's like he's saying, watch out, this could happen anywhere,
Yeah, anytime.
even in your seemingly peaceful town square.
Precisely. And as the play unfolds, you see how easily people are swayed
How quickly they abandon logic and reason.
in favor of belonging, of becoming part of the powerful rhinoceros majority.
Sadly, yes. And that's where our protagonist, Berenger, comes in.
Exactly. He's the one who's not so quick to jump on the rhinoceros bandwagon.
Yes, Berenger is our everyman.
Like us, a bit of a slacker.
He enjoys his drinks, but ultimately represents the struggle to hold onto your individuality in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform.
He's the guy watching everyone around him lose their minds and he's just trying to figure out what's going on.
Right, and whether he should join them or not.
And that's what makes him such a compelling character.
Beautiful.
He's not a hero in the traditional sense.
Yeah, he is flawed. He has his own weakness, but he represents that tiny voice in all of us that says, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right.
You said he likes his drinks. Does that play a role in the story?
It does. It's often brought up by other characters as a way to dismiss him,
Right.
to paint him as a weakling, someone who can't keep up with the rhinoceroses.
But you could also interpret it as Berenger clinging to a small piece of normalcy.
Wonderfully said.
In this increasingly absurd world, it's like his way of saying, I am not ready to give up on being human just yet.
Yes, I love it.
And as the play goes on and more people transform, Berenger's struggle becomes more pronounced.
Mood desperate.
Right. He's trying to hold on to his humanity, his identity,
Hmm.
even as everyone around him is telling him to let go, to embrace the rhinoceros.
There are some pretty intense scenes where he's arguing with those.
Absolutely. There is this one scene where Berenger's arguing with his friend Jean, who's become a rhinoceros.
Right.
Jean's praising the power and freedom of being a rhino, while Berenger's desperately trying to cling to logic and reason.
It must be like trying to argue with a brick wall.
Or rather, a rhinoceros.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And it highlights one of the key theatrical techniques that Ionesco uses.
The language?
Yes, the dialogue in Rhinoceros is often intentionally nonsensical,
Yes, it is full of repetition,
full of repetitions.
cliches, and arguments that go nowhere.
So it's not just the rhinoceroses themselves that are absurd, but it's the whole way people communicate.
Exactly. It reflects how language can be used to manipulate, to confuse.
Right, and ultimately to erode our sense of individual thought
And it goes back to Ionesco's critique of how easily language can be used to spread ideology.
and suppress dissent.
Okay, so we have got Berenger, our reluctant hero, and this breakdown of language.
And other characters?
There is Jean.
Oh, yes. Have you noticed how Jean's character in Rhinoceros isn't just about a dominating nature and a superior complex, but also reveals a disturbing streak of racism?
Absolutely, Jean's arrogance goes beyond simply asserting his intellectual dominance. He seems to view others as inferior, not just in thought, but also in race, fueling his belief that he is somehow part of a superior group.
hmm His sense of being almost superhuman isn't confined to his rationality. It spills over into a kind of racial elitism where he implicitly justifies his own status while dismissing the value of those who don't fit his narrow view.
And that feeds into his hypocrisy, doesn't it? He ironically conforms to his own prejudiced ideals, masking his insecurities with conceit.
Right. His racism isn't just an offhand remark, it's part of a broader worldview that elevates his own identity while demeaning others. This reinforces his need to dominate and control the narrative around him.
And he falls victim to the very collective madness he despises.
You see, fight against conformity isn't just external, it's also about confronting the prejudices and hypocrisies within ourselves.
All right. But could you take a short break here?
Yes, need one badly.
Okay, so grab a drink or stretch your legs. When you come back, we will dive into the next set of characters like Botard, Doodard, and Daisy and explore how they each respond to this absurd transformation.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Now, back to our discussion. Let's talk about Botard.
The cynical skeptic who initially refuses to believe that the rhinoceroses are real.
Right. Even when they are right in front of him.
He is like this guy who insists that everything is a hoax, a government conspiracy.
Even when all the evidence points to the contrary.
Exactly. He represents that stubborn resistance to change, the inability to accept anything that challenges our worldview.
Right.
And yet, ironically, he eventually succumbs to the rhinoceros.
And transforms himself. Like even the most steadfast deniers can be swept up
Yeah,
in the tide of conformity if the pressure is strong enough.
precisely. And then there is Dudard.
Yes, the intellectual elite.
He's the one who tries to make sense of it all, to find a rational explanation for the rhinoceroses, even as the world around him becomes increasingly illogical.
So he's the one trying to find the logic in the illogical.
Exactly. He tries to rationalize the transformations by comparing them to historical precedents.
He's desperately searching for a way to maintain his sense of order and control in the face of chaos. It's like he's desperately clinging to to his intellect, even as it is slipping away, being consumed by the rhinoceros within.
That's a powerful way to put it. Right. And then there's Daisy, Berenger's love interest.
Yes.
She initially resists the transformation, but she is also much more pragmatic than Berenger. She sees the rhinoceroses as a fact of life.
Yes, something to be adapted to rather than fought against. So she is like the voice of reason.
Yes, but in a chillingly detached kind of way. She is not swayed by ideology.
Right. She simply accepts the new reality and adjusts her behavior accordingly.
And then, in a heartbreaking twist, she ultimately chooses to join the rhinoceros.
Ooh, leaving Berenger utterly alone. Such a devastating blow for Berenger.
Not only is everyone around him turning into a rhinoceros, but now the woman he loves is gone too.
It's a crushing moment that speaks to the play's deeper message about the seductive power of conformity.
Even love. Wow. Even the strongest of bonds can be broken under the immense pressure to belong.
It makes you wonder, what would it take for you to stand your ground when everyone else is giving in?
Right.
Could you resist the rhinoceros? That's the question, right? Ionesco is posing.
To all of us.
Right. He's not offering any easy answers
He's simply holding up this absurd mirror to humanity.
and asking us to confront the darkness within ourselves. Okay, so we have got this town overrun by rhinoceroses
And a protagonist battling against conformity?
and a cast of characters with different responses to this absurd epidemic.
Yes.
But let's talk about the title itself, okay?
Okay?
Rhinoceros.
It's got to be more than just a bunch of animals rampaging through the streets.
You're absolutely right. The title works on multiple levels. On the surface, you have the literal transformation of people into rhinoceroses.
It's a striking ancient image that immediately grabs your attention, but it's the symbolic meaning that truly resonates.
So the rhinoceros isn't just a rhinoceros.
No,
It represents something more.
think of it as a symbol of blind conformity, right? Of the loss of individuality, the brute force of ideology.
Okay.
Those rhinoceroses embody the dangers of surrendering to the herd mentality,
Wow.
of abandoning your own thoughts and beliefs in favor of the group.
Makes me think of those historical moments when people were swept up in mass movement, where critical thinking went out of the window
Yeah,
and everyone was just following the leader.
exactly. And that's the brilliance of Ionesco's play. He's using this absurd, almost comical scenario to highlight a very real and very dangerous human tendency.
Right.
He's reminding you that it's not just about rhinoceroses.
It's about the potential for any ideology, any group to consume individuals.
And erase their unique voices.
Okay, so we can see why this play still packs a punch all these years later.
It's a warning about the fragility of individuality.
Yes, the selective power of conformity and the ever present danger of losing ourselves in the crowd.
Absolutely.
And that's where Ionesco's genius lies.
He's using absurdity to reveal a profound truth about human nature. He's forcing you to confront the darkness within yourself, the potential to become a rhinoceros.
So before we come to the ending, why don't you take a quick break?
Yes, we have covered a lot from the historical context to the rich symbolism in the title.
We'll be back in just a moment to tie everything together.
Stay with us, there's more to come.
Welcome back.
See, we are back.
Okay, so let's talk about Berenger. What happens to our everyman hero as the gameplay progresses? Does he manage to hold on to his humanity?
Or embrace rhinocerosity?
Rhino ferocity, you mean?
Right. In this increasingly absurd world, that's the central tension of the play, isn't it?
Yeah.
As the town becomes increasingly populated by rhinoceroses, Berenger becomes more and more isolated. It's like he's trapped in this bizarre nightmare.
watching everyone he knows succumb to this strange epidemic.
I can only imagine how lonely and terrifying that must feel for him.
Absolutely, and that isolation.
Remember how we talked about the dialogue being intentionally nonsensical?
Yes,
Well, as Berenger tries to reason with the rhinoceroses, their language becomes even more distorted, further emphasizing his inability to connect, to find common ground.
it's a world that's lost its logic. So it's not just physical isolation, but also a profound sense of intellectual and emotional isolation.
Precisely.
And it's in those moments of isolation that you see Berenger fighting with his own weaknesses.
Questioning his own sanity.
Right.
He's tempted to give in, to just accept the rhinoceros transformation as the new normal.
New normal. Yes, it would be easier, wouldn't it, to just join the herd.
That's a question that resonates even today. When you're surrounded by people who all seem to believe the same thing, it takes real courage to stand up and say, wait a minute, I don't agree.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes Berenger's struggle so relevant.
Right.
He represents that inner conflict between the desire to belong and the need to stay true to ourselves.
So what happens? Does he give in or does he fight back?
Without giving away the ending entirely, Berenger's journey remains a testament to the power of individual resistance. Okay, he might not be a traditional hero,
Right.
but his refusal to conform, his desperate attempt to hold on to his humanity in the face of overwhelming absurdity is what makes him such a compelling character.
It sounds like Ionesco is offering a glimmer of hope, huh? A suggestion that even in a world gone mad, individual choice still matters.
That's existentialism.
Wow.
Ionesco was a master of ambiguity,
Right.
so he doesn't offer any easy answers.
But I think the play ultimately leaves you with a sense of possibility.
A reminder that even when surrounded by rhinoceroses, you always have the choice to define who you are.
That's a powerful takeaway.
It is.
So, as we wrap up this session, what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
It's this rhinoceros is more than just an absurdist comedy. It's a mirror reflecting our own reality. It's our own potential for conformity, our susceptibility to groupthink, and the importance of safeguarding our individual thought and critical thinking.
Lovely. And to remember that even when it feels like everyone else is turning into a rhinoceros, you have the power to choose a different path
Exactly, rhinoceros challenges you to confront the absurd.
and to question your own assumptions and to ultimately define your own humanity. You know what I think is so interesting about this play
Was that?
is that it's not just about like fascism or it's about any ideology that can take over and kind of erase the individual. So I think that's really what makes this so powerful and so relevant.
That's the takeaway.
Yes.
So, eavesdroppers, have you enjoyed our conversation
And if you have, why don't you drop some comments as well?
about what we can talk about in our next LitChat session?
Yes, and like, share, subscribe.
But never confirm.
Never.
Never.
So until next time.
Bye bye.